On this episode of Watch Stuff with Us, more Mr. Ballen. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Watch Stuff with Us. I'm JD.
I'm Katie.
Please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and leave a comment below, please and thank you.
Share with your friends, your family, the mailman.
Everyone. It helps our channel. We have been growing pretty well over the last, 2 months that we've been back doing this on a regular basis. So we want to keep that going.
It's been fun.
And in order to keep it going, we're going to jump into some Mr. Ballen videos. So
let's do it. Sync.
Story.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play. Like I said, this video is entitled "This Story May Save Your Life." So let's see if it's really something that will truly save our lives.
I always love his look. I feel like next time we do this, I need to just break out like a flannel and a backwards cap. And
you really should.
You
really should. We should dress like him.
Mm-hmm.
Story is a stark reminder as to why you should always read the fine print. But before we get into today's story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, on the morning of August 7th, 1981, a 34-year-old wildlife photographer named Carl McCunn stood on the edge of a lake in the Alaskan wilderness and chucked a box of ammunition into the water. The splash it made was surprisingly loud in the total silence that surrounded him. Carl was on the last day of a 5-month-long solo camping trip in a very remote area of northern Alaska that was actually inside the Arctic Circle. A plane had dropped him off here in early spring, and he had set up his tent by this lake, which was surrounded
like a beautiful area, but also
forest
scary.
And huge snowy mountains.
It looks like Yellow
During
Jack.
this 5-month trip, Carl had not seen or spoken to another
Great show.
person
Can't wait for that
the
to come back.
entire time. There were no phones, no roads, no rangers, no people around for at least 100 miles. I mean, this is true isolation. Carl looked up into the sky and listened carefully for the low roar of the plane that was supposed to pick him up today. But as he listened, he couldn't hear anything. But this didn't worry Carl, because he actually had only arranged for his pickup date, not the pickup time. So it was just at some point on this day he was going to get picked up. He didn't know exactly when. And so as he anxiously waited, he just kind of puttered around his campsite and continued to pack up his things. And as Carl did this, he remembered that the type of plane that was going to be picking him up today, it was his buddy Rory's plane, it was really small. And there was a chance that he couldn't actually fit all of his belongings on the plane. And so in anticipation of this, he had identified that he didn't need all of his ammo. And so that's why he was chucking his ammo into the lake, basically in preparation for pickup. Just then, a breeze kicked up, and so Carl zipped his parka up to his chin. This was actually the so-called warm season in the Arctic Circle, but warm in the Arctic Circle meant still near freezing temperatures at night. And as much as Carl loved being out in the wilderness, doing these solo camping trips out in the middle of nowhere, he really was excited to get back to his home in Anchorage, Alaska, and see his friends and call his dad and, be in a nice warm house for once. Carl was about to chuck his 6th and final box of ammunition into the lake when he heard the loud sound of a wolf howling on the other side of the lake. And it made him stop for a second, and he decided that, maybe until the plane gets here, I'll hold on to at least 1 box of ammunition. So he stuck this final box into his bag, picked it up, and then he walked along.
Why would you bring so much ammo, right, and then just throw it away? Like, that makes no sense. Like, why would you throw it in a lake? Like you said, either leave it on the side or something, or not bring that much to begin with.
Why do you have so much? Are you trying to kill a moose and then bring that on the plane? Because then, you won't have room for all your ammo.
So I don't know what his idea and his plan was, but whatever it is, it's not a good plan.
No.
Along the shoreline up to where he had rigged a net to catch some fish. And when he got to the net, he saw he had caught 2 trout. And so he scooped the fish out, he went back to his campsite, he made a fire, cooked the fish, and as he sat down to eat them, he just kept looking up to the sky and listening, hoping for this plane to arrive soon. When he was done eating, Carl made a quick entry into his diary, kind of detailing the last day at camp, and then he finished packing up all his stuff, and he brought it all down to the waterline, ready to be picked up, and then he sat on his trunk, again, just kind of waiting for his friend to show up. And by this time, it was about mid-afternoon, and still no sign of the plane. But nonetheless, Carl sat there kind of taking in the scene, this beautiful lake and nature. I mean, this is the last time he's going to be here, and so he's trying to appreciate it. After all, this had been a really successful photography trip. He had shot 500 rolls of film that he knew he could sell, and that would make enough money that he'd be able to do this again the following year. And so as Carl sat there, taking in the scene and daydreaming about next year's trip, he noticed the sun was beginning to set. And when he noticed this was kind of like the first time that Carl actually became worried. This far north, the sun stayed out for nearly 20 hours a day in the summer. And so if the sun was setting right now, that meant it had to be near midnight. And so his friend Rory, who was supposed to pick him up today, at some point today, well,
not a very good friend, I feel.
Carl knew his friend had officially missed the date. And Carl had no way of contacting him to see what had happened or when he would be here. And so as dusk fell, and still there was no sign of Rory.
So this video is entitled, "This Can Save Your Life." Having a phone is what I think the crux of this is going to be. Like, if you're going to be out in the middle of the Arctic Circle, you need to have a satellite phone so that if something goes wrong, you can contact somebody somehow, some
have
way.
Some flares.
Something.
Don't waste all your ammo into the
this
lake.
Is literally turning into a Yellow Jacket situation, but he's alone.
Yeah. Instead of plane crashing, they're just no plane.
Right. Like, what? I don't know. Why would anybody do that? Give me a theory in the comments below. Why would somebody go in a desolate, isolated place and not bring some form of communication with them? Or maybe in this video, Mr. Ballen is holding off and he's going to share with us that he had something to communicate with someone with. But we'll see. We'll see.
This just reminds me of Naked and Afraid, but
yeah,
with more clothes and
500
more
rolls
objects.
of film.
Yeah. But still not the best thinking.
Worthless film at this point.
Throw that in the
bullets,
lake.
right? And bullets that you threw in the lake.
There was no sign of Rory. Carl continued to get more and more anxious, and finally he had to reset up his tent, and he crawled inside, got in a sleeping bag, and went to sleep praying that his friend would be there the next day. The next day, Carl got up early and packed up his stuff and waited by the shoreline for his friend, but all day he waited, and the plane still never came. Carl tried to convince himself that, maybe his friend got mixed up on the dates, or, maybe something came up that's delayed him a couple
Maybe he was a week off.
He'll be here. But then another day came and went, and then another, and still no plane. And it was around this time that Carl remembered something that made him feel sick to his stomach. On the night 6 months earlier, when he and Rory had discussed pickup plans, Carl remembered that night had been filled with drinking. I mean, these guys were just laughing and having a good time.
Rory was drunk.
At some point, as the beers were flowing, Carl had asked Rory, "Hey, can you pick me up on August 7th at the end of my trip?" And Rory had said, "Yeah, I can probably do that." But Rory had also said that he would have to check his schedule first before he could 100% commit to this. And Carl, in his excitement,
you gotta be kidding me.
Okay. Let's
all that had just
you speak. You go ahead. I'm gonna take a drink because I need a drink at this point after hearing this.
I just have one word: idiots.
Why would you do something like this without having the dates solidified? Like 100% solidified.
You have no backup plan.
Right.
You have no communication.
Right.
Your friend did not commit to picking you up. You are stuck.
And you're
here.
You're relying on this friend who you were drinking with or hanging out with. Whatever. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But
apparently they didn't text about it.
Right.
Write it down.
This is the only person
put it in a calendar.
This is the only person who seems to know this. So if that person were to die for whatever reason, you're just stuck.
Yep.
Come on, man. Come on.
I can't with
this video will save your life. Yeah. Be not an idiot. Will definitely save your life.
Keep a few brain cells.
At least 2. The one that would tell you to tell someone else and to bring a phone. That's all you need. And maybe not throw away your bullets.
Now you're really going to need them if you're stranded there for who knows how long.
100% commit to this. And Carl, in his excitement about going on this trip and getting ready for it and all that, had just forgotten to follow up with Rory and make absolutely sure he could pick him up. And so now Carl was realizing that Rory wasn't delayed or mixed up about the dates. Rory wasn't coming. And Carl knew there was zero chance of another plane just happening to fly over the area and that plane picking him up. I mean, for the entire summer Carl had been out here, he had literally not seen any planes. His best hope was that his dad or maybe one of his friends would report him missing. But he knew that was unlikely, and it actually was his own doing. Carl traveled constantly and almost never told people where he was going or when he'd be back.
This guy is so dumb.
This dude is just stupid.
This isn't his first go around with this.
This isn't his first time being stupid. He's a habitual stupid person.
He travels often and doesn't tell people where he's going. Good job, buddy.
Come on.
You get 2 thumbs up for that one.
Come on. Like, this is a situation where almost whatever happens to him, he pretty much deserves
Karma.
it at this point. Like,
You messed up.
AA Ron.
Don't mess up, AA Ron.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's see. Maybe something else will.
I don't know how this is going to get
this
any
guy.
better.
Yeah, maybe something else will.
Seems like he had one friend and he relied on that person.
And on one trip recently, Carl had gone out and missed his return date, and his dad had been concerned about him, and so called the police. And when Carl had come back and realized what his dad did, he told his dad to never do that again.
Never be concerned about me, Dad. I know I'm going to a remote location, not telling anybody where I'm going, and I'm supposed to return on this date, but if I don't return, please don't send help.
Are we going to start keeping tabs on how many stupid things this guy has done so far? Shall we count the ways? Okay, so let's go through it. He got rid of his ammo, almost all of it. He decided to go on this trip in the first place and spent an entire summer in an isolated area away from people and civilization. Didn't bring a phone. What else am I missing? Did not confirm the dates for pickup with the only person who knew he was going on this trip. This isn't the first time this has happened.
Mm-hmm.
He told his father not to send the police looking for him if he should be delayed on his return.
So you're setting yourself up to just have nobody look for you.
Yeah, there's nothing here. Okay, so I'm guessing this video is going to end with this dude just being bones.
At least he had 500 rolls of photos.
Yes. I wonder what the photos are. Were they worth it while you're sitting there?
Not if you can't get them back to sell them or anything. What are you going to do? Just look at the negative?
Yep. This is a great one.
I remember this day.
I don't know if I'm going to make it.
I didn't have a calendar, but I remember this day. Maybe on a Sunday.
This is making me mad. Like this, normally Mr. Ballen videos don't make me mad. This one has me like pissed off because I don't get this. If you've seen this video before, please comment. If you haven't seen this video before, please confirm that this guy is an idiot.
I really want Mr. Ballen to be like,
video's over. Yeah,
this
guy died. It was over.
Had to share because idiots.
Yes, this video will save your life. Don't do anything he did.
And realized what his dad did, he told his dad to never do that again. Never contact authorities if I'm late. I'm fine. And all of this meant now Carl was going to face.
He looks like.
Okay.
He's amazing. He looks like Andre the Giant meets. I don't know. Richard Simmons, maybe. Like,
yeah,
they had a love baby.
His hair is like laid and wavy. Like, he does look like he would go to the woods and just like never come back out. Is that a scarf? Is that a scarf? Or is he wearing a turtleneck?
It's probably an ascot.
Oh boy. Likely. Yeah, he would wear an ascot.
I only learned about that word from Scooby-Doo. Fred always has his ascot on.
Yeah, I just had to stop and talk about this guy. And rocking suspenders. I'm cool with the suspenders. But the rest of the ensemble?
I still say Andre the Giant, Richard Simmons, love baby.
Andre the Simmons.
A brutal
Richard the Giant,
winter,
yes.
All by himself with limited supplies and only a single box of ammunition.
Yes, but Ice, it's so loud.
Hey, it's Mr. Ballen here, and I am so excited to tell you all about a brand new podcast from Ballen Studios called Redacted Declassified Mysteries, hosted by the incredible Luke LaManna. From covert government experiments to bizarre
ASMR Ice Cube.
Why? I just drank all of this.
Yeah.
You didn't hear me crunching on ice, did you? You're being rude to our consumers right now.
No, I just forgot for a minute there was a mic.
If they wanted ASMR, they would tune into an ASMR channel.
Let me know if you want me to start doing some ASMR. Here we go.
Oh boy. No. You're gonna mess up our algorithm.
That stuff always like weirds me out.
YouTube's gonna get confused.
Oh, we just lost a viewer.
We lost viewers.
Oh no. My apologies. Come back. I'll be quiet now.
assassination attempts, Redacted dives deep into the astonishing true stories are shocking. Follow Redacted Declassified Mysteries with Luke LaManna on the Wondery app or wherever else you get your podcasts. You can listen ad-free right now by joining Wondery Plus in the Wondery app or on Spotify.
I only have Audible.
A few weeks later, at the end of August, Carl was still stuck out in the Alaskan wilderness. By now, Carl had fully accepted that Rory was not going to come pick him up.
It's my life
and Carl
now.
was doing his best not to fixate on his stupid mistake. He figured he had two choices. The first one was that he could just stay put and hope to be rescued. This was the conservative option. He knew how to get food and also firewood near his campsite, so he wouldn't starve to death and he wouldn't freeze. But this would only keep him alive. This would not actually get him rescued. The other choice was that Carl could pack up his campsite and attempt to basically hike out of here 75 miles to the nearest city, called Fort Yukon.
You got all the time in the world.
Could get him home.
You may as well give it a try.
It became a much higher chance of death. If Carl did the hike, well, those 75 miles would be over extremely rough terrain with absolutely zero human-made trails. And so one little slip up and he could fall and get hurt or get lost. And also finding food was sort of a toss-up. And the weather at best would be brutal and at worst would be fatal. Plus, the entire region those 75 miles were in was absolutely teeming with wolves. Carl knew both of these choices were bad.
And you
but
don't have
he was
your
running out of time to make a decision. The brutal Arctic winter was fast approaching, and if Carl was going to attempt this horrible hike, he would really have to do it soon.
Carl.
And so as Carl thought about what he was going to do,
I feel like he
trudged his way over to one of his rabbit snares, and he was so happy to see he had caught a rabbit. And so he took the rabbit back to his camp and he cooked it over the fire. And as he's eating it, he's thinking, you know what, this isn't so bad. I caught food for now. I mean, this will keep me alive at least for a couple of days.
Listen,
maybe I should just stay here. But deep down, he knew the staying put option was not a real option. I mean, even though, yes, by staying here, he could keep himself from starving. He knew how to get food and all that. Well, he'd still be a sitting duck for all the predators in the area, and there were many. And remember, he only has
either way. There's predators.
But just then,
can't get past this dumb decision to do, right?
The distant whine of a small plane engine. At first, he thought he must be hearing things. Remember, he has not seen a plane at all since he got here. But sure enough, he looked up into the sky, and a second later, he saw a plane flying directly towards his camp, low and slow. Carl ran in his tent and grabbed the most brightly colored thing he could find, his sleeping bag, which was bright orange. He ran outside of his tent and began waving it back and forth.
This guy really needs
Carl
some
saw
flares.
the plane belonged to the Alaska State Troopers, and so he figured his friends must have reported him missing, and now the police were out to rescue him. A moment later, the plane passed directly over Carl's camp, so low to the ground that Carl could actually see the pilot looking back at him. Carl looked right at the pilot's eyes, and when Carl was nearly certain he had just made eye contact with the pilot, he threw his fist up in the air in excitement and jumped up and down. He couldn't believe it. He was saved. The pilot was going to land and take him home. With a big grin on his face, Carl watched as this plane, sure enough, made a big U-turn. And then Carl watched the plane make another pass over the camp, low and slow, which Carl figured meant, the pilot was looking for a place to land. And so as the pilot was doing that, Carl rushed to his campsite and began packing everything up. And as he did, he's kind of keeping an eye out, watching the plane, looking for it to land. But it didn't. The plane just kept on flying straight away from Carl's campsite until it disappeared over the horizon. For the rest of the day, Carl just stared off into the distance, hoping for this plane to come back. But it didn't. Lying inside his tent that night, Carl couldn't sleep. He was so shaken up by what had happened that day. He didn't understand, he saw the pilot. The pilot seemed like they were looking back at him. Why didn't they land? Why didn't they stop? Carl told himself that, maybe the terrain was too rough and...
All right. Now you get all, you think you're done. Your life is over pretty much. And you out here eating rabbits, trying to contemplate this 75-mile hike. Then your rescue comes, makes eye contact with you,
sees you asking for help,
clearly
sees you celebrating that you've been seen, and keeps
flies
going.
Away.
Hopefully he radioed somebody and like, hey, there's a guy down here. But I feel it probably didn't happen.
I don't know.
Although I feel like he got rescued because we heard the tale. Like, how else would we know his story?
the guy who flew over the top of him made up the first part of this story.
I think I saw a rabbit.
Yep. And he threw away bullets. I see
boxes
of bullets.
See all the ammo in the water?
Yeah. What an idiot. But yeah, why would they just fly over him and not pick him? Okay. All right. Tell us, Mr. Ballen.
Was too rough and there was no way for the pilot to land. That was possible. And so perhaps this pilot was flying back and getting another plane, maybe a float plane, to land on the water. Carl didn't know, but he felt like that could be a possibility, and it sort of made him feel a little bit better. But he still couldn't relax enough to sleep.
I feel like as a pilot,
so, knowing he was just going to lay there all night, he
sat
up, turned on his flashlight, and began looking for something to read, just to occupy his mind. Now, at this point, Carl has been out in the wilderness all alone for months and months, and he's been stranded for weeks. He has read all of his books and all of his magazines like 1,000,000 times. He's even read his diary 12 times. I mean, he's read everything. And so as he was looking around his tent, he was looking for literally anything else to read. And suddenly, he found something. His hunting license. It was like the one thing he had not closely read. Not an exciting thing to read, but new. It was just a little paper certificate with some rules and regulations and safety tips about hunting. And so Carl just began reading the front, and he read it all the way down, and then he flipped it over and he continued reading, but then he saw something that made his heart practically stop. At first he thought maybe he misunderstood, but no, he read it over and over again, and it was very clear. And so Carl looked up in shock. He suddenly understood why that pilot had left him. For weeks, Carl stayed close to his camp, just hoping and praying that somehow, some way, that plane would still come back.
Okay, so what did he read on there? What do you think he read on there? If I had to guess, it said that once you're there, and there's no available area to land, so you can only be helicoptered out.
Or if you don't call for help, we can't help you.
Yeah.
We don't pick up hitchhikers. Sorry.
Remain calm if you see us fly over. If you show any signs of needing to be rescued, we will not rescue you.
Remain calm. Help is not on the way.
Right. You're done.
And praying that somehow, some way, that plane would still come back. But it never did. And by the time Carl had actually accepted this fact that really the plane's not coming back, well, by that point, it was too late to try to hike out. So all he could do was stay put. However, the lake had frozen over, so he couldn't fish. His snares all sat empty because all the wolves and foxes got to his catches before he could. By October, Carl was getting really skinny. By November, Carl was genuinely starving. On November 26th, Thanksgiving Day, Carl laid inside of his tent and made a diary entry. There would be no Thanksgiving feast for him today. His food stores were totally gone, and the Arctic winter was getting so bad. In fact, his fingers and toes were turning black from frostbite, and he was sick all the time and constantly had chills. And as Carl wrote in his diary, he looked out the tent flap at his dying fire, knowing he had no more firewood. He knew he only had one choice left to make. He scratched a final sentence into his diary. He wrote, "They say it doesn't hurt." Then he set his diary on the floor of the tent near his rolls of film. Then he reached for his rifle and his last box of ammo. A little while later, A single shot rang out across the lake. A couple months later, in early February of 1982, Alaska State Troopers would find Carl. Carl was deceased. He had taken his own life. What Carl had only realized later.
Yeah, I wasn't. I thought he was gonna get rescued.
I thought he'd at least try that hike.
Right?
Yeah, I feel like he had other options.
Yeah, 75 miles. Hey, it's better than pulling that trigger.
He just sits there for months, not even attempting. What? Like, I mean, you could try to hike and possibly fall to your death, or you can just like end your life anyway. So why don't you give it a try?
Be a man of action, right? Well, at least not that action, maybe, but yeah, I don't give it a shot. I mean, he
literally this guy just sounds like he was a hot mess.
Yeah, he didn't make the best choices.
No, and I hate that it came to how it did.
Yeah.
I don't like that he had to make that choice. Again, I feel like he made a bad choice.
So I'm guessing the way that they found out all of this stuff happened was because of
his diary.
Yeah.
So somebody showed up eventually.
At some point, somebody rescued him, but obviously it was too late. Yeah. The one question I need to know is why they flew over and didn't rescue him. They never said what was on the hunting license.
Not yet.
Yeah, that's the hook. Tell me, Mr. Ballen, let me know.
Was that when he made that fist pump, when he was so excited when that pilot had flown overhead and he thought he was going to get rescued? Well, that fist pump had sealed his fate. Because, like it said on Carl's hunting license, a single arm raised in the air is the universally recognized body sign for all okay, do not wait. And so when that Alaska State Trooper pilot flew over Carl's camp, he did make eye contact with Carl. He saw him. But he also saw Carl raising his fist in the air and thought he was okay, and so he turned around and he left. If Carl...
Oh. Carl.
He did no research before going on this adventure.
He just winged this whole trip. He just said, I'm going to go out here, stay for 2 months in the middle of nowhere, and I'm not even going to know anything about anything. And the most haphazard trip that anybody has ever made. And then, I mean, you think he was shocked before he pulled the trigger that this happened? He probably was. He was probably like, I cannot believe how this happened. Now, when we go back and look at it, we can understand completely how this happened. Totally unprepared, totally made almost every wrong move you can make, except for trying at the end. He kind of just like gave up. I get it, the giving up part, but all the setup, like we go on vacations, I go to the grocery store, I wing it sometimes. I'm not going into the middle of the wilderness and just winging it.
Right.
I think if I came to the grocery store with a list, I'm doing far better than what this guy was doing with his whole life on the line.
Dang it, forgot the crackers. Oh, well.
Darn.
At least I didn't fist pump.
Right? Note to self.
Everything's fine.
Don't be on the Jersey Shore and need rescuing because it's a wrap. Snooki, don't ever.
GTL.
JWoww, don't ever come out here.
They're never going to go in a wilderness. Are you kidding?
They would do a season of them in the wilderness.
They did the cabin.
Jersey Shore, Naked and Afraid.
Nobody wants to see that.
Somebody wants to see it. Somebody wants to see everything.
Blech.
He read that hunting license a little bit sooner, he would have known to have raised 2 hands in the air as the pilot flew over for the universal sign that means, pick me up.
Oh, he just needed to celebrate with both arms instead of the one. Gosh darn it.
And now, here is a clip from the latest episode of Redacted. Enjoy.
I mean, I feel like if I would have seen the plane, I would have been like, hey, like with both arms. I wouldn't just be like, yeah. I would have been like, hey, or something, which, I don't know.
Wait a second.
How do you celebrate?
So, we've come to the end of another episode of Mr. Ballen. How do I celebrate? I celebrate with two hands. You know, I might do a fist pump from time to time, but I'll never do that again after this. Because I cannot believe that this guy.
Unless everything is okay.
Yep. That's a universal sign that everything is okay. So maybe this video will save your life. Maybe if you go somewhere and your plane crashes or you are stuck out in the middle of nowhere for several days, make sure that somebody knows you're leaving first and foremost. Make sure you bring some form of communication.
Yeah.
Make sure you don't throw away your way of protecting yourself.
Do the goalpost.
And don't fist pump. Do two hands. Two hands for safety.
Goalpost.
Two hands for, yes, it's good.
And to air out those pits that have been in the wilderness for months with no deodorant.
That makes no sense to me, because if you watch football, this is the sign of it's good. So I would think that like this would mean like keep going, not help me. Help me.
And why was he just doing this? He wasn't even like, hey.
But
he was
that's
just like,
that's what it was though. He was probably waving like this and saying that it's okay.
Well, there should be
he was saying like, help me, but
fist bump and a wave.
But they probably couldn't tell all those differences just by, flying by from 100 feet away.
I feel like the pilot could have gone a little closer and at least yelled out like, hey man, you okay?
But then the messed up part was that he ran away to start packing up his stuff. So he probably thought that like, he was saying like, oh, I'm good. Now I'm going back to whatever I was doing. Man. Andre the Giant, Richard Simmons, you messed up, bro. And you paid with your life. But you know what else doesn't pay with your life? Hitting that like button, hitting the subscribe button, and dropping a comment below. It is absolutely free. It costs you nothing but a little bit of your time and a little bit of your finger action.
And some love.
And some love for us. So please do that on your way out. Thank you for watching another episode of Watch Stuff with Us. I'm JD.
I'm Katie.
Don't pass us by.